All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the There's No Crying in Fantasy Football show.
Because there is. Welcome.
There is no crying. There is no crying in fantasy football.
Oh.
So this is a new show that we'll be doing once a week. I go by the name of Scrap, and my co-host Reef Ledger.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, Reef Ledger is the name. Don't forget it. Welcome, guys.
So we'll be doing this show once a week. Let's get into some of the terms that we'll be using in this show, and then we'll go into how the show is going to play out every week.
Yeah. I think the terms are very important, so you know in which the manner we're using them moving forward for this league. The first term I want to get off my chest is something we've all used, something we've all said, and that is the word bum.
Universal term.
Exactly. Everyone knows what a bum is. Now, when we use bum, we don't want you guys to forget that these are some of the most elite athletes in the world. These are some guys that work very hard at their craft, very hard at what they do. And most often than not, they're just not a right fit for the team they're on, or they may have been past their prime, which leads us to washed. Now, washed is someone who is good or was good, but now we feel like they're a little bit past their prime, or their time is up, or the league has evolved to where they no longer fit in the league or that team. The next term is a BEM, not to be confused with bum. A BEM is BEM.
This guy thinks.
Yeah, exactly. Those are guys we feel who need to be out of the league. Okay? That when we say BEM, that means you need to be out of the league. And with that being said, I think the next thing really is the nicknames, right?
Yeah.
So we normally give all our players nicknames, specifically the studs, maybe like the top 100, top 150 players. They all have nicknames, or someone who emerges. So if you hear us give a nickname, give us a shout out.
Yeah, there's gonna be somebody who may pop out, 1 week, and we may not have a nickname for that guy because he may not be heard from again.
Exactly.
But so let's get into how the week is going to play out for us. This is obviously our first show. It's our inaugural show, and we're going to go into our draft strategy and some players we're targeting in the draft as we approach week one in football. I know some people out there that are still drafting their teams. They're getting ready for the season. They're getting news that's coming out right now. So we're just going to go over some things for the draft in this show. But going forward, we'll have a couple segments, and Reef, help me out with this. The first segment we're gonna have is called Troll Call. Explain to the people what Troll Call is.
Yes, the Troll Call is where you guys can hit us up and let us know a player or a person in your fantasy league who you thought was gonna be like kill it, and they just bombed that week. That is called the Troll Call. That person or that player will be on our segment of the Troll Call. We'll give the stats of what they were predicted to put up, and then we'll give the reality of what actually happened. Everyone knows not to get caught up in the projected score. That is the biggest facade ever. You go with your draft, your strategy for the person, your projection for the person, not the app. Please do your research and go on your own. But that's what the Troll Call is about.
Stop using the apps.
Exactly. And I think the next one, I think you could give it to us. You can elaborate on it for us. That's we're right, and trust us, we're right.
Yeah, trust us, we're right, because I think the name speaks for itself. Trust us, we're right. So every week we're going to have players that we are going to highlight that we think you should start, or players that we think you should sit based on their matchups. And we think you should trust us because obviously we're right.
Clearly, yes.
The next segment we're going to have is called Uncut Gems. So tell us what Uncut Gems is.
Yeah, Uncut Gems are our word for saying this person is a sleeper. It could go weekly or it could go by the year, but you'll hear us say, instead of sleeper, we'll say this guy is an uncut gem. This guy is waiting to break out and waiting to make make a big run, big payday coming up.
Yep. So that's and then the last segment we're gonna have is called Game of the Week, and that's where we're gonna target, what we think is gonna be the highest point total fantasy wise for that one game. So do we have two teams that are gonna produce a lot of fantasy stars in one game, which normally does happen, each and every week. So we're gonna highlight that game of the week. Mm-hmm. So Kamish, we've got everything started. We're in the inaugural show. Let's talk about the draft.
Yeah, let's go.
Right? So if I was to ask you, what is your draft strategy? So when you are approaching your drafts, how many leagues are you in?
I'm not in a lot this year, man, because of COVID. I'm only in the most leagues I was ever in was 5. Now I'm only in 3 leagues this year.
Okay. So when you're approaching the draft, what's your draft strategy?
Draft strategy is actually based on the year you think is going to be, and what you see as a vital part for your team and your building, the building block for your team for that year. This year, my personal draft strategy was to go running back first, which didn't happen. I mean, in most leagues, it didn't happen for me because of the shortage of running backs or the big drop off after like the top 8 and 9 running backs. There's like a drop off in workload. Not really ability. It's really in workload because a lot of the league is mostly running back by committee. So I tried to go running back early, but in the first 3 or 4 rounds, that was really it for the most part. Normally, I don't go quarterback early, but I've seen people win championships who go quarterback early. If you take a stud such as your Patrick Mahomes, your Lamar Jackson, those guys get you to a championship and get you that ring. But primarily for me this year it was running back early, and then of course try to grab a dominant wide receiver 1 to begin the draft. What about you, Kamish?
Yeah, so for me, if I'm outside of the, let's say, top 3 or 4 picks, I'm targeting a wide receiver in PPR leagues, and it really just depends on the league that I'm in. Standard leagues, I'm trying to target, a running back. But in PPR leagues, if I'm outside of that top 4 where I'm missing out on, let's say, Christian McCaffrey, Ezekiel Elliott, right, Kamara, maybe even Cook, I'm looking at Michael Thomas, just off the bat. Oh, Saquon too, Saquon as well. But I'm looking at Michael Thomas, and then from there I'm looking at Devontae Adams. As I move forward in my draft, I'm trying to build my team out. I'm seeing how the draft falls. If running back, there's starting to be a run on running backs, then maybe I'm looking for my next receiver to build out my team. How I approach tight ends is if Kelsey and Kittle fall and they're gone, then I'm targeting tight ends late. I'm trying to pick up, the next up and coming tight end or something like that. Same with quarterback too. I'm trying to pick up, either Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes, and then after that, I'm trying to pick up a sleeper quarterback that I think could provide upside. As I get later in my draft, I'm targeting upside players. So I'm not really trying to target a lot of veterans. I'm trying to target, rookies or second-year players that I think can make an impact on their team.
Yeah. I mean, you actually broke it down. Salute, Kamish. Yeah. Of course, I think what you're saying is very important for our viewers to just understand the actual thought process of what you go from beginning to mid to end of draft. That's very important. What you're saying at the later round, you're always going to go upside. You're always going to go take flyers on rookies, people that you hear about in training camp. This year was a difficult year because there was no preseason. So we couldn't see any players. We had to go off of what we heard from reporters, which is tough for people who actually watch games and go off their own report and what they see of a player. It's very tough.
Right. And I want to say salute to all the future champs from this season, because this is probably one of the toughest seasons we've had to evaluate.
Yeah.
Like you said, with no preseason, and then you got the COVID. I hope all of your leagues have an IR spot for COVID.
Please. It's a must.
It's a must. But with this year, it's been very difficult trying to evaluate talent, evaluate players and teams and their strategies. So salute to all the future champs that are coming out of this season.
Yep.
So Kamish, let's move on and let's talk about the dark horse number one position. So when we talk about the dark horse, we're not talking about Christian McCaffrey. We're not talking about Michael Thomas. We're not talking about Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes. We're talking about who do you think could emerge as your number one in that position this season? Mm-hmm. So let's start with you, Commission. Let's just bounce back and forth between positions. So you do a quarterback, I'll do a quarterback. Yep. So let's start with your quarterback. Who do you think could be your dark horse quarterback this year?
So when we say dark horse, we mean not the norm. Mm-hmm. You know, so the norm for a position of quarterback would be L. Jackson or Pat Mahomes. Mm-hmm. You know, that doesn't mean we're not going to take a top 5 quarterback, but it's just someone out the norm of those two individuals. So we're still going to take a quarterback who we think is in an offense that's set up to lead his position and fantasy points. And the same for wide receiver. Of course, the obvious will be Michael Thomas, you know, who would clearly be the number one overall choice. So with that said, I would go with Dak Prescott. You know, he has the offense to potentially be the number one overall quarterback in fantasy. You know, he's stacked at every single position, literally every single position. Even his offensive line is still one of the best in the league. He has Zeke coming out the backfield where he dumps passes off to him. They got CeeDee Lamb, who the reporters are saying is impressing in camp. We'll have to see him against a real defense and actually getting hit really hard by a defense who's trying to take his head off across the middle. But CeeDee Lamb is tough. He's shown it in college. Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper. We just want to see those guys put it together. I'm gonna put it on Dak, but it's really on the receivers also, because Dak he has a lot of ability, but sometimes his receivers don't always step up for him in certain games and big games. So, but if all is well, I would go with Dak. Commish. What about you?
That's a good one. And just to kind of highlight on that, Dak is also playing on the tag. So he has a lot to prove this season. So I like that pick, Commish.
Yep, thank you.
For me, it's Matt Stafford. When I look at Matt Stafford has all the tools to be a number one quarterback in fantasy. Now, is it likely to happen? I don't know. But I mean, when I look at his stats last year, before he got injured, he was on pace for 5,000 yards and over 30 TDs. He was fantasy points per game, I think, the number 4 or 5 quarterback before he got injured. So when I look at his offense, hasn't changed. It's the same receivers that he's had. The only thing that's changed is that they brought in DeAndre Swift, which could add a different element to his running back game, which could take some the defensive pressure off of him as well. And then when I also look at the tight end, he has T.J. Hockenson now, who's in his second year, so he should progress as well. So I'm looking at Matt Stafford to have a big year if he stays healthy and possibly take that number one spot.
Yep. And Commish, I hope you're right, because I got Stafford in a couple leagues. So, listen, I love Matt Stafford. I mean, he's always one of the top fantasy quarterback options in the league. He's been throwing forever. It seems like he's never had like a 4,000 yard passing year that he's finished this season. I mean, he's a tremendous talent. So great pick, Commission.
Yeah, and also to point out, he, besides the injuries, he's somebody that I'm targeting late, and he's fallen to me late in drafts. And I don't know why that is. Like when I look at Dak Prescott is going probably top 5 in quarterbacks right now. So when I'm trying to go deep in my draft and I'm getting to like round 11, 12, 13, Matt Stafford is normally falling to me in those rounds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let's talk about the running backs.
Yeah, we'll go with running back. I'll start who I really like this year. Again, this is dark horse, but we're still going to go with some elite running backs because, as I said, there's a drop-off in production and availability. The best ability is availability. A lot of running backs get banged up really quickly, and one running back I think who has the potential to be the number one overall running back is Josh Jacobs from the Raiders. The offense should be improved. Josh, another year in the Gruden system, he runs a West Coast offense. He is looking to improve his catches. They're saying that he is going to do a lot more catching out of the backfield, which will only up his fantasy value. And I think he has. They're building it. They're building in Las Vegas. Gruden. We'll see. It remains to be seen how the production on the field. But one thing you know from that offense that you can count on is Josh Jacobs. I think they're going to rely on Josh, and they're going to go to him in most positions. They're going to start off with the run. So yeah,
I like that. I like that pick. For me, it's Austin Eckler.
okay.
And that's in PPR league strictly.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about Austin Eckler, with Melvin Gordon gone, when you look at his production last season, even when Melvin Gordon came back, he was, I believe, running back number 4 in PPR last year. So with Melvin Gordon gone for the whole season, and there's no real clear backup right now. I mean, you got Justin Jackson, who's been iffy at best. You know, you got the rookie Joshua Kelly as well. But I think Austin Eckler is going to handle the majority of the workload. And when you add on the passing stats, I mean, Tyrod Taylor is a factor there. You know, we don't know what we're going to get from Tyrod Taylor, but if he consistently checks down that ball to Austin Eckler, especially with limited pass catching options, you know, you have Keenan Allen, you have Hunter Henry. We don't know what Mike Williams' status is going to be week to week, you know, if he can stay healthy. But I think Austin Eckler remains a staple in that offense, and I think they're going to target him a lot coming out of that backfield.
Yeah, I like the pick, Kamish. My only issue with Eckler is availability. Is he going to be able to hold up, you know, for a full season? I mean,
Right.
being that number one workhorse back, he's
Right.
shown that he has the ability to take over games and be a top 5 PPR running back at minimum. He's shown that he has that ability. I just don't know if he's going to be able to be durable to do, now that Melvin is gone, to be durable to do a full season. But that remains to be seen. Now, I like Eckler's ability. I like his talent, though.
Okay. Let's go with wide receivers. Who
Yeah.
is your wide receiver?
Wide receivers for me, man. Again, you know, you're obviously going to go with. You want to go with. If this was non-dark horse, we would go with. I'm a Julio fan, so I'm always going to go with Julio. Of course, I would go with Michael Thomas first because he's peppered with targets. But aside from that, I would go Julio. But since we're going with dark horse, I want to go with somebody who's improved every year, and he seemed to just continue to get better. I'm trying to figure out his ceiling, and that is Chris Godwin. He is an absolute savage, man. You know, and it could be some that he is playing with Mike Evans. It could be, but I think that a lot of it is actually just Chris Godwin. And I think that I expect him to have a big year this year. I don't have him in any leagues. That's how fast he goes. But his production last year spoke for itself. He dealt with some injuries, but I think that last season, but I think that this season he'll be much better. From what I'm reading about him in camp, he has shown a lot of progress, and he's getting even better. They're saying that he is one of Tom Brady's favorite targets, you know, as of right now. So we have to see it. As I said, we have to see it in the game.
Right.
But right now, I'll go with Chris Godwin. Who do you got?
Okay. I had 2. It was a toss-up for me. I was going to say Cooper Kupp. I thought Cooper Kupp could take that number 1 spot. But when I really look at the offenses, I'm going back to the Lions, and I'm going with Kenny Golladay. I think Kenny Golladay has the potential to take that number 1 spot, and just how much the Lions throw the football and how big of a receiver he is and able to, you know, get targeted in the red zone and, you know, his touchdown potential. I think he has the potential to put together a solid season and possibly take that number 1 spot this year.
Yeah, I agree with you, Commission. He dealt with it, and he dealt with a lot of issues with Stafford last year, and he still put up humongous numbers. That was actually the person I had as well as a sleeper to possibly take over. It just depends on Stafford if he's able to be healthy, man, and we got to see that the offense with Patricia and everything like that. So, but I actually like the pick. I think that Golladay, he was next up if I wasn't going to choose Godwin, so I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, appreciate it, Kamish. So tight end, who are you targeting at tight end? Who's your number 1?
You're going tight end, man. You know, like I said, the obvious for me is in a full 16-game season, I'm going to go George Kittle. It could be because I'm a Niner fan, but I think that he just has that talent.
That's a dark. That's not a dark horse, man.
No. I said I would go George Kittle.
Oh, okay.
Like non-dark horse. I would go George Kittle. But if we're
Okay.
going dark horse, I'm going to have to stick with that team in Vegas, man, Darren Waller. I mean, it's an incredible story for what he fought through to make it back to the league and make it to the team. And another year in the system, man, he really shined last year. He was him and Renfro, they were Derek Carr's like really only option, throughout the full season. And he has another year with Derek Carr. I think that he is only going to get better in the system with Gruden. Gruden trusts him, Carr trusts him, the team trusts him. He's back on track. I think that he could have a big year to lead the league and lead the position in fantasy points.
I like that, Kamish. For me, this is a real dark horse right here, but I'm looking at volume and I'm looking at teams that are going to be trailing and passing the ball a lot. And who other than the Miami Dolphins? I'm going with Mike Gesicki.
Wow, yeah, that's real.
I'm going with Mike Gesicki. When I look at PPR and just how much I think the Dolphins are going to be passing the football this year, just like last year, and I think Mike Gesicki could take that turn and really be a trusted passing option for Fitzgerald this season. I think he could have potential to put up huge numbers just from volume alone.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you said dark horses. I mean, you went midnight. Mike Gesicki. I honestly thought you were going to go another route, but that's what the segment is for. So I respect the pick. Commission.
Yeah.
I think now we can go into our next segment, which is RB2, wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Where we pick who we're picking 2 players, right, for each position?
Yeah, 2 players for each position. So what we're doing is we're targeting not your running back ones or your wide receiver ones or 2. We know who all those players are. Who are the people that you're looking to fill out your roster with? Who are your RB2s and wide receiver 3s that you're looking at to put in your lineup week to week? Right. So, Kamish, who would be your RB2s that you're targeting?
RB2s that I'm targeting. One RB2 that I'm targeting Marlon Mack, man. I mean, when you sit there and think about the production he had last year, he's dealt with a lot with injuries, which is the main issue because, like I said before, the best ability is availability, as we all know. But they have Jonathan Taylor like so far ahead of him in drafts, and it's like we haven't seen Jonathan Taylor. In college, we know that he was a very bruising running back. We know that he could not catch out the backfield, and he also dealt a lot with fumble issues in college. So you can't hold on to the ball. You're not going to get playing time. I have to see Jonathan Taylor in a game, which is why preseason is kind of tough. No preseason this year is kind of tough because I want to see him in a game before I can rank him ahead of Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack, 1,000 yards last year. Not a good quarterback, to be 100% honest. Still catching passes at the backfield. He's expanded his hands as a receiver. I think he's going to be a great RB2 as long as he remains healthy. And according to camp, in camp, everyone looks good. But according to camp, he's looking very good. The second RB2 I have is Todd. I love girls, girly. I mean, he has the year. He has the team to do it this year. He had the team to do it last year. But this team that he has is way better in every single position. Way better at quarterback, way better at receiver. Offensive line is better, slightly better.
Yeah.
But I think he has it this year, and he has the backfield. They're not going to give the backfield to Ito Smith. I think he's a solid addition for RB2, and again, that is based on health and that knee. What about you, Kamish?
Those are good ones, Kamish. For me, I gotta follow the money, man. I'm going with Raheem Mostert. I think he could be an RB1 this season, honestly. But he's being drafted as an RB2. And I look at that Niners offense and just how much they run the ball. I mean, I think they were second in rushing attempts last season. Mm-hmm. And, Do I think that McKinnon can come on and add some value in the passing game? Yes. Am I really worried about Tevin Coleman? Not really, because they chose to give Raheem Mostert the contract extension. So I think he's going to be the one to lead that backfield. And I want a piece of that offense from the running perspective as well, because just how they use their running backs and the blocking scheme that they use, I think it's a valuable position. My second one, I'm targeting young guys, and I'm going with Cam Akers, and I'm just looking at opportunity. I don't think Darrell Henderson is what they're touting him out to be. And I also don't think that Malcolm Brown is going to be the person to carry that offense. So I think they're going to look to the rookie to kind of fill that Todd Gurley role. And I think he could have some success this season being a solid RB2. Do I think he has potential for RB1? Not necessarily, not this year, but I think he could be a solid week-to-week starter as an RB2.
Yeah, I like the Cam Akers pick, young boy from Florida State. I think that he could be very productive in the scheme that McVay runs. As far as the first pick, with Mostert, I'm a 49ers fan, everyone. I love Mostert. I love Raheem. The biggest thing is Shanahan, man. He keeps switching the running backs. He goes with the high hand. Raheem had the high hand towards the end of the season into the postseason. So I like Mostert. I just Shanahan is really the main thing. I don't see McKinnon taking over a bulk of carries. So it'll either be Mostert or Coleman. I think you have the right one between the two. So good pick.
Yeah. So who's your wide receiver 3 targets?
Wide receiver 3, man. I mean, you spoke to one team earlier, and that is just the targets and the volume. And I think this guy has a chance to really explode this season, given being healthy. And that is Preston Williams. I think he has the talent to take off. Last season, before the injury, he was leading the Dolphins in damn near everything for the most part. And of course, in camp, they're saying he looks amazing. But I do think that he has the availability. This is a guy who went undrafted due to concerns, off the field concerns, while in college. He came to the Dolphins, where he clearly had the opportunity. And again, in Miami, Albert Wilson, Allen Hurns, they both opted out this season. Who is going to be catching the ball?
Right.
I mean, it's really going to be Devontae or Preston. And Preston you can get for value way later in your drafts. And he's a tall guy, fast, great hands. And the team really likes him. They said that he works really, really hard. So that is one guy who I'm going with. The other guy is your boy, man. I mean, Deshaun Jackson. I think that, again, D-Jack showed us something with Wentz last year, and it looked really special.
For 2 games.
2 games. It was only 2 games. He's 34. He's 34. So I went young and I went old. This is a guy who he's typically been boom or bust. Due to the injuries that Philly has is the reason why I would take him at wide receiver 3. They don't know about Alshon. Rager's supposed to be out. Ertz has the whole thing going on with the contract. We don't know what's going on with that. D-Jax has been there day in and day out and has been working. And from what I'm seeing, he's been putting work on Slay. He's put videos up of him working against Slay, who is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And he looks good from what I've seen. So I would take a flyer on D-Jack at number 3 and see where it goes. What about you, Commissioner?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to go with a young guy and an older guy. The first guy is Henry Ruggs. I'm taking a chance on Henry Ruggs at wide receiver 3. I know we don't have any tape on him. We don't have any preseason games, but I'm looking at the opportunity. You got Tyrell Williams that's on IR. You got another rookie, Brandon Edwards, that's coming in. You got Hunter Renfrow and Nelson Aguilar. Do we really think that there's anybody in that offense other than Henry Ruggs that's going to get the majority of the targets in that offense? I don't think so. I mean, Darren Waller, yeah, of course, but I think Henry Ruggs is going to be the most targeted receiver in that offense. So he's a guy that I'm looking that's kind of falling into that wide receiver 3 target that I can put into my starting lineup every week. Of course, the Raiders are a run-first team, but when it comes to throwing the ball, I think Henry Ruggs is going to be the guy that they're looking for. The other person that is a vet, and I'm going out on a limb on this one, is AJ Green. I'm looking at AJ Green as a wide receiver 3 right now, and that is crazy to say, but we just don't know what AJ Green we're getting this season yet. But
Or if we're getting the AJ Green.
right. If we're getting AJ Green, right. But I think the potential is there, and I think he could put up a lot of good numbers with Joe Burrow. I mean, let's be honest. I think that offense is going to be throwing the ball a lot. And I think AJ Green could play a big role in that transition in that offense as well. I mean, we know Tyler Boyd is always going to get his targets. But who else in that offense are we really looking at to take over that wide receiver 2 position in that offense from a fantasy perspective? So I'm looking at AJ Green to really put up some numbers for wide receiver 3 position this season.
Yeah. I like the picks, Commissioner. I like the picks. You're going with the targets and where they dictate. I like the Henry Ruggs pick. Of course, they're gonna have to throw the ball to somebody. It is not just gonna be Waller. It's gonna be Ruggs. It's gonna be Edwards. It's gonna be Renfro. So I mean, Ruggs is a great pick. AJ Green. I have AJ Green in a couple leagues, and I'm praying everything you're saying is right. So yeah.
All right, so let's keep it moving, Commish. Let's talk about uncut gems. Who do you have as an uncut gem for your team? And when we say uncut gems, we're talking about sleepers. Like who are your sleepers?
Yeah. One. There are 2 guys who I have as uncut gems. One of the guys plays for my Niners. That is Trent Taylor. He is a guy who's been out for the past 2 seasons due to injury. But he's back, and in camp they're saying that he has looked possibly – the Niners have had a bunch of injuries, but in camp they're saying that he's looking like one of the best receivers in camp. That's saying a lot because prior to injury, he was one of Jimmy G's favorite targets. So I'm going based off of relationship, and he's the guy that's going to come out the slot. And it's always going to be that option for Jimmy G to fall back on the side from Kittle. And Trent and Kittle are actually best friends. So, and Kittle and Garoppolo are close friends. So that triangle of guys hang around each other. So I'm guessing because of their relationship off the field, it will relate into targets on the field for Trent Taylor. I think that he will have a very good year. I mean, especially given the wide receiver position going the way it's going in San Francisco. The second one I got is Chris Herndon, and that is from the tight end from the Jets. It's another guy who's dealt with a few off-the-field issues. He was suspended for some games, and he came back, was injured. But apparently him and Sam Darnold continue to keep that connection on the field, which is very important. Again, the Jets it's another team who they may be playing from behind. They may be throwing the ball a lot, and they don't have a lot of wide receiver options. And Chris Herndon has that relationship with Sam Darnold. I think that guy's going to be next in line for something big. So what about
you stole my sleeper? Chris Herndon was my sleeper.
Oh man, dang! Sorry about that, Mitch. I should be showing this to one.
I'm gonna give you 2 more. So there's 2 guys that I'm looking at late in drafts, and one is Michael Pittman.
Yep.
Michael Pittman, I think, could really fill out that wide receiver 2 role for the Colts. And like we talk about health and availability, is T.Y. Hilton going to be available? Like every year, we expect T.Y. Hilton to produce the numbers that he normally produces, and he's normally getting injured. It's either a hamstring or his foot, some injury that's taking him out of the lineup. So when you look at targets for Phillip Rivers, I think Michael Pittman is going to be the next in line. I mean, you have Paris Campbell that they're competing with and Zach Pascal, but I don't think either one of them can really take over, Michael Pittman, just 1 from draft status and also 2 from just talent alone. I think Pittman is going to be a welcome addition to the Colts. My second one is that Washington football team's Steven Sims. Steven Sims is the guy that I'm looking at to get a lot of volume in that passing offense. I mean, you have Terry McLaurin, but who else do you really have? I mean, from the tight end position, there's really nobody there. There's Jeremy Sprinkler, but who really is Jeremy Sprinkler? And then when you look at Steven Sims connection with Haskins last season at the end of the season, I think he produced double digits in the last 3 weeks of the fantasy season last year. So Steven Sims is a guy that I think could take some of that progression from last season and make an impact this season. So he's a guy I'm looking at as kind of a sleeper that you can play, week in and week out if you really need to.
Yeah, I like the picks. I like the picks, Commissioner. I especially like Michael Pittman. We know Phillip Rivers loves throwing the ball up for grabs, and he loves those big receivers that have to be able to go up and get the ball. So Rivers has done well with tall receivers. That's ever since Vincent Jackson. So and he's last season he had Mike Williams. Michael Pittman's just another mold of like one of those guys potentially. So I like that pick a lot. Steven Sims. I like the pick because of the options that they have on the team. I mean, who else is Haskins going to throw to? So I really like those picks also.
So the last segment that we have for this show is the high-powered offenses. So let's talk about 2 offenses apiece that we're targeting that we want a piece of for our team. Who are those 2 teams for you?
Outside of, the Chiefs and outside of the Ravens, I would say the Falcons. For me, that's one of the teams I think we're all expecting like that big breakout year for Calvin Ridley, for him to cement himself as legit number 2 and him just being healthy and killing it opposite Julio, taking another step. They've added Hayden Hurst. They've added Todd Gurley. Matty Ice is still as cold as ever. And it's another year with them in the same offense and them still being able to work. Matty Ice is back with Dirk. He's been with Dirk for years, so I expect Matty Ice to take another step forward as well. Very underrated quarterback, by the way. So I expect the Falcons to be one of my high-powered offenses. The next one is, of course, Tom Terrific, man. It's the Bucks. I mean, they just added Leonard Fournette. There's another team that's literally stacked at every position. At the wide receiver position, the tight end position, they may have one of the best tight end rooms in the league. And then the running back position, you just add Fournette. They add an offensive lineman in Tristan Wirfs in the draft this past year to help protect Tom and his blind side. I think that this team is going to improve as the season goes. Again, this is Tom and Fournette, their first time going to be really gelling together, but I think that they have potential to be one of the best offenses, of course, in the NFL. This is clearly Tom's best roster of talent around him in his entire career. And when he had some sort of talent with Randy Moss, we saw what they did that year. I think he's a little bit older from then, but I still think that Tom has the ability to be able to find those weapons.
Okay. I'm gonna go with 2. I'm gonna go with 2 that's like not the norm. Of course, you got the Chiefs, you got the Bucks, you got the Saints. But I'm gonna go with 2 that's kind of different. My first one is the Arizona Cardinals, and I'm looking at the offense alone, with the addition of DeAndre Hopkins. You have Christian Kirk, who I believe is a emerging wide receiver from a talent perspective. You got Larry Fitz that's still there as your wide receiver 3, and that's just a crazy wide receiver 3 to have for me. And then you also have Kenyon Drake coming out of the backfield. If Kenyon Drake can stay healthy and carry the load, I think that's a high-powered offense. They don't utilize the tight end very much, so all the targets are going to the wide receivers and the running back out of the backfield. So that's an offense that I'm kind of looking at that I think can be high-powered this season. And I think Kyler can take that next step as well. I think he needs to be a little bit more accurate. But when you look at Kyler also as a QB for fantasy, just to have all those weapons that he has, even the weapons in the backfield, and then the ability to rush and get rushing yards as well, I think that's a threat as well.
Yeah.
The other one I'm looking at, call me crazy, is the Denver Broncos. With Cortland Sutton, the addition of Jerry Jeudy, you got Noah Fant, You got Melvin Gordon as an addition to the backfield. You know, you got Philip Lindsay that's coming out of the backfield as well. I think if they can utilize those pieces well, I think Drew Lock could have a real successful season, and you could see that offense kind of take off.
Yeah.
And I don't think that they're facing real, you know, like tough defenses, you know, in that division as well. I mean, Kansas City has an all right defense. Oakland, Oakland is Oakland. You know, I think that playing those teams.
Forget about the Chargers though, with Bosa, Ingram, and Casey. Don't forget about the Chargers.
Can't everybody stay healthy?
Yeah. That's the issue. Yeah.
Derwin James is already out. You know, and they got to play these teams twice. So I think that they could be really successful. You know, I don't think that they'll be successful against the Chiefs, but when you look at the Chiefs matchup, playing them twice a year, they're going to have to pass the ball. You know, so I think they have the ability to put up some yards, and you may see some real good fantasy production out of that team this season.
Yeah, I like the Broncos. High powered. I think that I would have to say again. I got to see Drew Lock. You know, he did really well when he improved each week when he came on board. He took over that starting job, but now teams got film on him, so I just want to see a little more this year.
Yeah, and I'm trying to go away from the norm.
Yeah, of course.
So that's one that kind of sticks out to me, and also the Cardinals.
Yeah, they have the weapons. The Cardinals, man. I mean, we've had this discussion before. How I feel about Kyler Murray, man. The dude he's scary good, man. As me being a 49ers fan, we typically have very little answer for him. All of our matchups are always close in games. So I expect him to take that leap, especially with, as you said, the new additions and him just being back in the system again. I do like Arizona they could be a high-powered offense. I pray you're wrong, but it's it's very, very good pick.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this week, Kamesh.
Yes, sir.
Hey, and let's give a shout out to Three Man Weave.
Yes,
we appreciate you guys for hosting this show. So we'll follow up next week. Reef Ledger, I appreciate you showing up this week, and there's no crying in fantasy football.
There's no crying in fantasy football. Shout out again, as Scrap said. Shout outs to Hill, Cannon, AJ. We're trying to work on a live mock draft for you guys soon. It should be coming with us and the Weave over there. We're trying to get something to you guys, and again, we're gonna be inviting people on the show to troll, to give their picks, to give their gems.
Yeah.
To give anything they want. Each week out the month, we're gonna try to bring someone new on, just a little 2-3 minute talk about what they feel about the fantasy season and their questions or concerns. So just hit us up, man.
All right, Kamesh. See you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.